You're listening to Strange by Nature, your guide to the strange, weird, unbelievable, and improbable wonders of the natural world.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here today. I am Kirk Mona, and I am joined today by Rachel Ginza and Victoria Thompson. We are all professional naturalists who together have scoured the world for weird and wonderful wonders just to please your mammalian brain's desire for novelty. Isn't that nice? Let's do this.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. We have Victoria this week.
Good to be here.
Yay!
Hey, Victoria.
Oh, so
Awesome.
exciting.
Like a party every time I actually show up to my own podcast now.
Yeah. Well, that's, think how excited people are to hear and see you. It's wonderful.
Yes.
So excited all the time. So I get to start us off this week. And this week I decided to go, well, not the ocean. It's not the ocean. We've talked about...
So then Australia.
Oh, no. Also, no. We've talked about salamanders on the show before. I know, I'm mixing it up.
We have.
Just in a couple different capacities. Okay. Like, we talked about the giant salamander a little over 100 episodes ago. And we mentioned salamanders and... 100, just so long ago. And we mentioned amphibians and salamanders when I talked about metamorphosis. Who knows how far back. But since it's been over 100 episodes, let's talk about salamanders again. Because, and you better strap in, because this is wild. In the waters of some caves in Slovenia and Croatia, is what is also known as the human fish.
Oh.
What?
The human fish?
The human fish?
It has another
I bet
name.
it's
I'll
neither
tell you
a human nor a fish.
You are correct,
I think
Victoria.
that's a pretty safe assumption, Victoria.
You are correct. Picture a salamander or maybe an axolotl. An axolotl would be closer. With like a long tail, short little legs, and a pear-shaped head. And it's about 8 to 12 inches long. This is...
The head or the whole thing?
The whole thing.
Good clarification.
That is an excellent clarification.
That
the whole
sounds
thing.
more reasonable.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is an aquatic salamander. It lives entirely in the water. So it does have external smaller gills kind of behind its head, very similar again to that axolotl. And it's this pale pink color, very similar to like my cat's nose or maybe a peony or white baby's flesh.
Okay. Or just, pale
white
pink.
Baby's
pale
flesh.
Pink.
That's quite a phrase. Okay.
Thank you. Now
There's our episode title right there.
Oh, no.
Maybe? I don't know about that. We'll see.
So this salamander doesn't really have eyes. They stop developing pretty early, and eventually they get covered over and over by skin layers. But they can still detect light. Again,
oh, really?
Well, they live in caves, so it's a blind salamander. It doesn't need eyes. It doesn't really need eyes.
And I guess if you don't need eyes, they're kind of a liability because they're very sensitive and delicate parts of the body.
Exactly.
So why not cover them
So
up?
like they're
And
able to detect
painful,
light.
Probably.
Yeah.
Ooh, so painful. So instead, it actually uses its other senses to detect both sound waves in water, vibrations on the ground, and scientists have actually also found that they're able to detect electrical stimuli and electrical fields in the water, which is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, cool. Okay.
They think to the extent there's hypothesis out there that the Olm, which is the other name for it, are able to weakly detect the Earth's magnetic field to orient themselves in the cave.
Cool.
Which is pretty wild.
Very cool.
Once upon a time, when floodwaters washed them out of the cave, people thought that the Olm was a baby dragon. Of course, it's not. It's a salamander. It's not a baby dragon. It was really cute.
Are we 100% sure?
I'm going to say probably. But if they are,
okay, it is science, so you're going to leave the door open.
We'll leave a little bit of possibility that they are dragons. That would be amazing. Especially since
Probably
instead of
not, but go on.
right, pretty sure. Well, yeah, that's fair. So instead of going through metamorphosis, it does stay in that larval form in the aquatic waters and lives in those waters of the caves, continuing to live and grow just a bit more and more until after 16 years, they reach sexual maturity.
What?
Oh, full stop. Hold on.
That's even longer than most humans.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
16
yeah. I said
years.
16 years. I would like to point out in my notes for salamander.
That is nuts.
Oh, yeah. I buried the lead on this, man. Because you think that's wild.
Wow.
By the way, in my notes, I do have pause for astonishment written in. So
we are properly astounded.
Beautiful.
I don't think that's the word.
So there are some efforts because they are a vulnerable species living in caves in some Alps in Slovenia and Croatia, to the point where there's actually one successful farm that is able to raise and breed these salamanders.
It's got to be a slow process.
It is a slow process because they have found that after they reach sexual maturity at 16, they then go on to live and reproduce to be at least 70 years old, with the understanding and thought that the ulm might actually be able to live past 100 years old.
So basically it is just like a human.
Yeah, pretty much.
Not that much like a human fish.
Human fish.
Yep. Yeah, they
So there are 70-year-old blind salamanders living in caves. I mean, do we know why they live so long?
No. Part of it is they do live in a pretty cold environment, and a lot of animals, it seems, tend to live a lot longer in colder environments. They do live on like fish and insects and things like that in the cave, but there's really no thought about or reason behind why they think they live that long. Although, I mean, if you don't
do they have any predators? Is that part of it too? Like,
I mean, once they reach adulthood, there's really like they generally will like survive pretty well. There's not like a ton of predators. However, another little fun bit here. So the female.
I get the feeling this is not going to be fun.
Well, it is a little fun, but one reason that could help with the reason why they're so long lived is the female will typically breed every 12 and a half years. So.
Oh my.
Wow. That's
so
like the opposite of fecundity.
Just a little bit.
How many little babies does she raise at one time, or does she raise them? I guess
20,000.
Up to 70. The average is 35 eggs.
So she's busy. She's busy.
Yeah, she's busy. And
I mean, actually, do they care for the young? Do you know, or is it just sort of like, have fun, you're on your own?
So when before they're born, the female will watch over and protect the eggs as best as she can before they hatch.
Oh, sure.
And then once they emerge, they don't take care of them anymore. They just let them go and do their own thing. But I will say reproduction has only been observed in captivity so far. We haven't seen it happen in the wild.
Okay.
So.
Well, that is simply stunning.
Yeah.
Yes.
Isn't that wild? Yeah, I buried the lead on that. That's the only.
I had not heard of these.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were talking about this salamander, and I was thinking, it's interesting. It's kind of cool. Lives in a cave, doesn't have eyes. Okay, not that weird. It's weird.
That was the goal. I'm like,
well,
we're gonna talk about this, and then wait for it. All right. Well, that's all I have for you both this week, though. So we're going to take a quick break. And when we return, it'll be Victoria.
Hey, shout out, by the way, to our newest patron, Davis. He, or at least someone from his family, is our newest supporter and member of the Society of Strange over at patreon.com.
Thanks, Davis.
Thanks so much. Yeah, thanks so much for your support, and thanks as well to our older, patrons who've been around for over a year and still renewing their support. We really appreciate all of you. If you want to support us, you can head on over to patreon.com/strangebynature, and we'll see you there.
All right, we're back. Kirk, Rachel, tell me what you think of when you think of the division of labor and gender roles in hunter-gatherer societies.
Oh, I saw this news article, Victoria.
What are the women doing?
Oh, I saw this. Oh,
okay, pretend you didn't see the news article.
Okay. Well, generally speaking,
yeah, what
I
are you
would
thinking, Rachel?
Unfortunately, gender norms or whatever, like more people tend to think that men are the hunters and women were the gatherers.
Right.
Yeah.
That
would be the stereotype.
Yeah. I don't know if either of you read Clan of the Cave Bear. Like, there's definitely that going on.
No, but you have mentioned several times that you were.
Well, there's a lot of ecological stuff in there. There's a lot of ecological stuff in there. But also this, it's about a Cro-Magnon girl who gets raised by Neanderthals, and the men are the hunters, and she wants to hunt, and she's basically ostracized from the clan for it. But yes,
right.
In general, the sort of general understanding is that in traditional hunter-gatherer societies, the men hunted the big game, and the women gathered plants. And to the extent that they did hunt, they hunted small, easy animals like rabbits, right? And this view of human societies, is
very pervasive,
catapulted into the cultural zeitgeist. Yeah, it's kind of the traditional orthodox view in anthropology, but also, in society at large. And this kind of stemmed especially out of a scientific symposium that happened in 1966 that was titled Man the Hunter.
Okay.
And it was gathering evidence from different fields, and they basically came to the conclusion that, yes, men hunted big game, and the meat from big game was the most crucial factor for human survival and evolution.
I'm gonna go ahead and go on a limb here and just take a guess that 99% of the attendees at this conference were male anthropologists who saw what they wanted to.
I think you're probably pretty correct. I did not look up the actual gender ratio.
No, I'm sure you didn't, but it just
odds
stands
are high,
to reason
Kirk.
People see the world through the lens that they,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, not only this, but this idea has often been held up as an explanation, especially in popular culture, for all kinds of gender-related things in modern society. Like,
sure,
men are this way because blah, and women are this way, and it's just like an immutable fact of evolution, and it's because men are hunters. That's kind of the shorthand. There has been quite a bit of chipping away at this narrative over the decades since 1966, but there was a recent study that was really interesting, which, Rachel, you saw, I'm sure.
I did.
Yeah, so there's a biological anthropologist named Kara Wall-Scheffler, and she decided to do some deep dives into the archives, and she combed through this database that has detailed information that has been collected over the past couple centuries by anthropologists of foraging societies, so modern hunter-gatherers, basically.
Yeah.
And instead of relying on the summaries of the research, as usually has been done, she actually went through and read all of the old reports.
Nice.
Like
Well
the
played.
notebooks and stuff.
Nice.
And there were about 63 societies from around the world where there was data about who was doing the hunting. And in 50 of these 63 societies, women hunted. They were trained to do it. They had their own weapons, and it was normal. It was considered normal in their societies. And they were not just hunting rabbits. In like a third of the societies, women were also hunting big game.
Sure.
So, yeah, this is like basically putting the nail in the coffin of this idea. And there's been previous research as well showing that the plants that made up part of the diet of hunter-gatherer societies, or do make up part of the diet of hunter-gatherer societies, are significant contributions to the calories that are consumed.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
100%.
it also varies by latitude, because the higher the latitude, the more the proportion of the diet's going to be made up of meat. Like, think of the Inuit.
Yeah.
They're mostly eating meat.
And the animals themselves are getting bigger too, which allows that, and also there's not as many fruits and things like that.
Yes, exactly. So it definitely varies by culture, by climate. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but this is really hardly the only area of scientific research where looking at the actual data has overturned some sexist assumptions.
Okay.
I love it so much.
For example, biologists believed for decades that male anoles defend their territories. Now, anoles are a kind of a small lizard that are found in Florida. And
we had those in my classroom for a while.
Yeah, they change color from green to gray, basically. Sometimes they're called chameleons, but they're not chameleons. Anyway, these little lizards, they were believed to be territorial. So it was believed males would defend a territory, and only female anoles who lived in that territory would mate with the male who kind of owned the territory.
Sure.
Well, then recently along came a female graduate student named Ambika Kamath, and she decided to study anoles, and she just decided to spend a huge number of hours tracking the movements of specific individuals over a large area. Where did they go? What did they do? Who were they interacting with? And by actually looking at the movements of these individual lizards, she showed that actually they're not territorial at all.
Okay.
So how were scientists so wrong for so long?
Yeah.
Well, it was based on a lab study from the 1930s, and they had some captive male anoles in the same enclosure, and the male anoles were showing some same-sex sexual behavior. And the scientists decided that the only reason this could possibly be happening was that the males were shut up in the same cage, because surely in nature something would prevent them from doing this horrible, unnatural act.
Surely. Ha ha ha.
Surely that would never happen in nature.
And the something that must be preventing them doing it is that they're territorial, so they don't encounter each other.
Yes, that's why it doesn't happen.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
that's interesting, because actually that makes even less sense, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
I mean, if they were territorial, they would be even less likely to be engaged in that sort of behavior, not more likely. Like,
right?
It makes the mental gymnastics.
It would be more aggression than anything else.
Gold medal in projection there.
These folks were hardly the first nor the last scientists to twist themselves into knots trying to avoid the obvious conclusion.
Right.
And, with the case of anoles, nobody the assumption just sort of got baked into the field, and nobody questioned it until someone did. Ambika came along. And going even further back to the granddaddy of evolution.
Darwin?
Charles Darwin.
Chucky D, yeah.
Yeah, so Darwin,
So many nicknames.
Darwin was a visionary and, he was right about a lot of stuff, but he was also a man of his time. And he believed that men were superior to women in humans and other species. And he believed that males were the main drivers of evolution. And that was why, basically, they were...
Because they're the ones making the sexual selection? Is that the idea?
They're competing for mates, they're fighting other males, and so on.
And the women are just passively, who's going to win me?
Exactly. That was basically
the gymnastics.
He definitely downplayed female choice. And for decades, scientists were twisting themselves into knots, trying to ignore or explain away behaviors that did not match these ideas. So promiscuous females, female choice in mating, aggressive females, dominant females. And in fact, as you two both know, female choice is now thought to be a significant driver of evolution, particularly for things like ornate embellishments, such as peacock feathers and other beautiful
Antlers.
things that birds have.
Antlers and deer.
Oh yeah, it's the females who are looking and going, all right, who's got the best display, and I'm going to make my choice. Certainly.
Yeah,
exactly. Birds, obviously, a lot.
Yeah.
And yes, so there's numerous other examples. Basically, sexism and homophobia have often been just blinders on our understanding of what is actually going on in nature and in human society. Thankfully, things are starting to change now. There are now research groups that are focused on overturning some of these misunderstandings.
I love
and
that.
Apparently, because put your seatbelt on for this one. Apparently, women can do science.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, that's the takeaway here, I think. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
That's it's a good example of why representation is so important in any kind of science, not just in terms of gender, but in terms of every type of diversity, in terms of cultural diversity, and just getting different patterns of thought, because different people approach problems in different ways and with different sort of sets of biases, but also with their, the blind spots they don't have that someone else may have. So getting that variety of thought involved in discussion is like the most critical thing we could possibly do for science.
Yeah. That's what I have for you. I know it's a little more on the sort of human behavior and understanding side of things than we typically go, but I thought it was an interesting topic to talk about. My main sources this week were an article from NPR about that new hunter-gatherer study, and Science News, and Wired Magazine. So we are going to take a little break now,
Nice.
And when we come back, Kirk will have something for us.
I will indeed. Welcome back, everybody. It's summertime, and so I've been thinking a bit about the sun. And the sun is pretty amazing. It makes life possible for most things here on Earth. But, living next to a giant ball of plasma that constantly bathes your planet in high-intensity energy isn't all puppy dogs and rainbows, right? A good portion...
Especially when you put it like
make
that.
Rainbows.
I mean, no, that's why I said it's not all puppy dogs and rainbows. I mean, it's partially puppy dogs and
Sometimes it
rainbows.
makes puppy dogs.
But indirectly, yeah. I mean, all life, I shouldn't say all, most life on Earth does require that the sun is there. And so a good portion of the solar radiation that reaches our planet is in the form of ultraviolet light. And that word radiation is in there, and that's kind of like scary. But in this case, the word radiation just means like given off, as in the sun radiates light. Ultraviolet light is just high energy light. And as I mentioned a few episodes back, we humans obviously can't see ultraviolet light, but it can be very useful because a specific wavelength of ultraviolet light called UVB, or ultraviolet B, is used by our skin to make vitamin D. which is what I talked about before when I was actually talking about scurvy and whatnot, which is vitamin C. But if you're confused what the connection is there, go back and listen to the episode. So UVB makes up only
in the title.
Yeah.
Vitamin deficiencies.
Well, now you gave it away. Yeah. So ultraviolet B, it makes up only about 5% of the ultraviolet light that we receive at the surface of the Earth. And here's the bad news. Because it is higher energy than UVA, which is the other type of ultraviolet light we get, it is more damaging to our skin. But again, it's not the majority of the ultraviolet out there. It's only 5%. It is actually the type of UV that's more likely to cause skin cancer, though. So it's like, yay, it makes vitamin D. B, it causes skin cancer. So, maybe it's good that it's only 5%, which means 95% of the light is UVA, which, also isn't that great for us to get on our skin. It's not as damaging as the UVB, though. So this is kind of the strange double-sided coin of life around a star, right? We need the energy from the sun to sustain life, but too much isn't a great thing either. So what I want to talk about this week are a few of the strange strategies that plants and animals have developed through millions of years of evolution, living next to this giant cancer factory we call the sun.
I'm intrigued.
First off, let's talk about plants. Now, I'm not going to go through like every single different thing because we are still discovering more all the time, but a few highlights for you. Researchers have shown that plants create something called cynopolyl malate. This is a natural plant ester that plants can use as a sunscreen.
Sunblock.
Recently, some researchers at not sunblock though, so sunscreen, and here's why. Researchers at Purdue University showed that if you shine light, specifically like laser light, like a UVB laser, at this ester, it is able to block that light, but it will still let through the wavelengths of light that are needed for photosynthesis. So it's specifically blocking just the UVB. So plants have found a way to make their own sunscreen, which is super amazing. Plants can get sunburned and sun-scalded and whatnot, so that is pretty important. I don't know if all plants have that, but they have shown that it is something that is present in plants. But wait, there's more. Screening out UVB, it turns out, goes way back, at least from an evolutionary perspective. Back in the 1960s, which I know is not that way back, but in the 60s, scientists discovered something called MAAs, which are mycosporine or mycospirine like amino acid pigments. It's a mouthful, you guys.
Yeah,
we're just gonna call them MMAs.
Wild.
It turns out they can also. Did I say MMAs? That's mixed martial arts. MAAs.
Yeah, I was like, hold on.
Is what
this
they are.
feels like fighting.
Yep. MAAs. Yeah, I mean, MMA is a totally different thing. MAAs, turns out, can block UVB light as well. And these have been found in very early primitive life forms such as cyanobacteria, microalgae, and fungi, but also in things like seaweed and corals and lichens, and even in freshwater fish and marine animals. So quite a diverse spectrum of life that has this. And because it's shared by so many branches of life, you can be sure this is a form of protection that evolved very early on in the history of Earth, because so many different species share this common trait. So that is super cool. Speaking of, like animals and whatnot, as a human, I know I have to slather my body in sunscreen, and it'd be pretty awesome if my body just made its own.
That would be so nice.
Well, it does. So skin has melanin in it, and melanin is a pigment in your skin that gets darker when exposed to sunlight. It's what creates a tan after being in the sun. That is your body, its natural way of trying to block all that sunlight that you're out in. And naturally, humans have evolved to create a lot of melanin, which is why much of the human population has very dark skin, which is very protective. Weirdos like me, whose ancestors are from practically up near the Arctic Circle, carry a mutation that makes our skin lighter so we can absorb more UV light and create that vitamin D in the dead of the dark, cold winter. And that white skin mutation is thought to have come around somewhere around 25,000 years ago. So like, yay, more vitamin D, boo, more skin cancer. So,
also
everything's
like
a trade-off.
I don't tan. I go straight to like burn.
Lobster.
Yeah.
Yep. That's how it is. So melanin, I also want to point out, is not just a human thing. That is present in many animals, not just humans. So it's a pretty common way to keep the UVB away.
The Olm that I talked about earlier, it does that too. It'll get darker if exposed to
very
light.
cool. Very cool.
Because it's a human.
Yeah, it's a mini human, yeah. But it's interesting you say that, like, if it's exposed to light, one of the things we find is that animals that have a lot of really thick fur don't make melanin because they don't really need to, because they're covered with thick fur. So it would be a waste of resources for your body to create this stuff that doesn't do anything, because the sunlight's never going to get to your skin. So really, that's a whole other subject we could talk about. It's pretty fascinating. But how about a strange, really uncommon way, since that's something that a lot of animals have? You want something really weird?
Yeah,
I do.
Let's talk about hippos.
Oh God. Again?
Hippos are awesome. They spend a lot of time in the water, right? And so that's a natural sunblock right there, because they're in the water. But they have something even stranger. If you read some of the old descriptions of hippos, you may see references to them sweating blood.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Now,
What?
that sounds pretty gross. And if you watch hippos closely, they do have this thick, sticky red goo that can come out of the pores in their skin.
Gross.
And it's kind of gross. Scientists have studied this stuff and found out that it isn't blood after all. It's actually a type of amino acid. And so it probably has a few uses. Turns out that it's antibacterial. Like if you got in a fight and you got some cuts and wounds, which they're hippos, so they do. And they can you see them like get big gashes. Like, I'm just going to go and sit in this dirty water. And you're like, what? How does that not get infected? It may be this antibacterial property from this stuff that's coming out of their skin. It also seems to repel insects. And most importantly for our story today, when some scientists studied it, they found out, ta-da, it reflects UV light and acts as a sunscreen.
Nice.
So very cool.
Fascinating.
And I don't, I'm just realizing when I said the word sunscreen, I don't think I actually said earlier, Rachel, why it's sunscreen and not sunblock. It was kind of implied.
Yeah.
But if it's a sunblock, it might be blocking like all the light. You just want to block just the UVB. So it's like a sunscreen. You want to let some of those wavelengths through in order to do photosynthesis or make vitamin D or whatever that plant or animal needs. So sunscreen is probably the more technically correct phrase there. So I can tell you, on those hot buggy days of summer, just sweating out a combo sunscreen and bug repellent sounds pretty amazing. Although if it means that you look like you have blood coming out of your pores, then
or if it
maybe
means that you look like a hippo.
Yeah, that part's not so great. So clearly, with millions of years of evolution at work on Earth, a number of different methods have evolved for dealing with the sun. But this week, my Strange by Nature Doing It Right award, which is a thing I just totally made up right now on the spot, goes to
hold on.
the hippo.
The hippo.
Yeah, so
Yay,
doing It Right award goes to the hippo. Way to go, hippopotamus. Round of
Nice.
applause for the strange blood that's not blood, sweat that's not sweat, that protects hippos. Great job. Yay.
Congrats. Yay.
I had a number of sources for this information. Science Alert, National Institute of Health, Science News, and Fisher Science. So shout out to them. And put your sunscreen on, you guys. That sun is real intense.
We're
I
happy.
do all the time.
Absolutely awesome. Well, we hope you are maybe making some vitamin D while you're listening to the show, and see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks everyone for listening to today's show. Be sure to subscribe. New episodes drop every Wednesday, and we love sharing this strange world with all of our listeners. If you would be so kind as to leave us a 5-star review, that would be great. It lets other lovers of the strange discover the show. You can reach out to us on social media by searching for Strange by Nature Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can send us an email as well. Our address is contact@strangebynaturepodcast.com. If you want more information about the show, you can also check out our website, which is strangebynaturepodcast.com. Until next week, get outside, stay curious, and embrace the strange.